Hey guys, a video for our how to do stuff in Japan playlist. However, it's another one of those observational videos, more of a heads up video than it is a how to do something video. This week I exchanged a couple of messages with one of our patrons who'd recently seen a video of a foreigner behaving badly, and also some other stuff about some Japanese business owners treating foreigners differently to what they treat Japanese people. So there's two aspects to this video. Some of this stuff we've touched on previous videos over the years. Probably some of our very first videos addressed things like this. We had one of our first videos was actually showing you some foreigners behaving badly in Japan. The other aspect of it is the way some Japanese people treat foreigners in Japan. So our patron was actually referring to tourism. However, we can extend this to any visitor to Japan, whether it be as a tourist or staying long term, because it sort of overlaps. It does overlap. So first of all, we'll deal with the visitors to Japan issue. Interestingly, when I was thinking about this today, what came to mind was a book. I can't remember which book it was, but it was a historical book, non-fiction, that I read years ago, and it was talking about the first English people to come to Japan, and about how they were treated really well by the Japanese hosts, and they were taken to a whole lot of interesting places, including to a giant Buddha statue. And over the years we've showed you lots of Buddha statues. There's lots of them all over Japan, and usually the big metal ones, where they're made of brass or something, aren't they, are hollow. And apparently these English guys were taken to this sort of Buddhist statue, which is usually in a like temple grounds, right? And it's usually a sort of a fairly sacred place to the Japanese people, to the Buddhist people. And so they were taken to this Buddhist statue, and apparently they took turns putting their head inside. There was a hole, some sort of access hole into the statue, and they were putting their heads in there and yelling out so they could hear the echo. And then before they left, one of them carved his name on the inside of the statue. So there's lots of stories, and that was 400 years ago, right? Some of the first English people to come to Japan. And then of course there was a whole heap of other stuff, wasn't there? Portuguese monks came and tried to convert everybody to Christianity, and there was all sorts of stuff that happened back then that resulted in the emperor at the time banning foreigners. Right, that's enough, right? That's enough, the foreigners' bad behaviour, no more foreigners. And they closed the door for almost 300 years. No foreigners were allowed in Japan for almost 300 years, you know. And when you hear some of those early stories, it's sort of not surprising, really. And it's sort of what we're facing now. It's the same thing that we're facing now. And over the years, we have addressed, quite often what happens is people will send us links to videos, you know, check out this guy behaving badly. And, you know, the one our patron was talking about is some foreigner videoing himself with his arm around a maiko. Maiko is sort of similar to a geisha, so she's all in the traditional clothes. And of course, that is a big problem. There are signs around Kyoto and places like that saying, please don't hassle the geisha, right? And which is amazing that they have to put signs up that say that, but apparently it's a common thing that the geisha are trying to walk from one, or the maiko, trying to walk from one place to the other. And of course all the foreigners surround them and want to take photos and do all sorts of stuff. And this guy sort of took it one step further, and he was putting his arm around her and all sorts of inappropriate behaviour, you know. So really, with the visitors coming thing, or even the long time stayers, what I've noticed over the years, and particularly from making the how-to videos and how people react to them, they're sort of like two extremes. There are two extremes to it, and then a whole heap of people in the middle. So one extreme is the people who just go out of their way to come here and try to do everything the right way, that won't cause any ripples and won't upset the locals, and to try and be the best possible guest they could possibly be. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you get people who leave comments on our how-to videos and say, I'm not going to do that, I'm not Japanese, I'm not going to do that, I'm not Japanese, I'm going to do what I do, I'm going to do it the way I do it. And that's a big group, that's a big group. And then there's other people that are somewhere in the middle, right? And people will choose to what length they're prepared. And I mean, we've noticed it with our friends and family as well. our friends and family come from Australia for a visit, and you know, they behave in different ways as well. Recently I gave one of my cousins a pretty good rap because him and his wife and daughter behaved exceptionally well when they were here. They're absolutely amazing. They were really flexible, they were really observant as to what was going on, and tried to blend in and not cause any ripples, and they're absolutely wonderful. We've also had dear friends and dear family members who we love dearly come here and just refuse to go along with it and sort of do their own thing and cause all sorts of ripples and all sorts of discomfort and embarrassment, right? So we know everybody sort of falls somewhere on that line, that's the spectrum from one or the other. With the people who really try, who come here and really want to do the right thing, and they're the ones often send us messages too, saying, look, I've got to do this, how should I go about doing this, and how should I go about doing that? That's why we made the book. So those of you who haven't seen it yet, the How to Do Stuff in Japan book, if I remember, I'll put a link underneath this video, the How to Do Stuff in Japan book. And that's why we make these How to Do Stuff in Japan videos, is for those people who care, right? What we've noticed over the years, the people who don't care, you can't convince them to care. Those people who say, oh, I'm not going to do that, I'm not Japanese, I want to do everything my way, you can't convince those people otherwise, because you know, that's their thinking and they're not interested in another perspective on it. That's fine. So we've sort of accepted that over the years, and now our focus is to make videos that are helpful to those people who want to know. You know, those people who want to know, you know, how to behave here in a way that's not going to make people embarrassed or uncomfortable or make waves or ripples or whatever. And that's from a thoughtful, kind, thinking of others' perspective. But also the other side of that coin is, if you behave in appropriate ways here, that can have actually better results for you. I mean, that's strongly my observation over the years, is the ones, and we've talked about different examples, both sides of the coin, the people that come here and just do whatever the hell they want, break all the rules and do it their own way, and I've seen the results they get. And then I've seen the people who come here who are successful here, and I don't mean successful like making millions of dollars or whatever, but the people who are successful here in having a happy life with, you know, with a well-balanced happy life with, you know, a comfortable place to live and, you know, and a car to drive, and successful in that way. You know, that they've achieved what they wanted to achieve here. You know, some people want to achieve $1 million, some people just want to achieve a comfortable lifestyle and a happy lifestyle. And I've noticed that the ones that know how to be observant, look, listen and learn, and sort of go with the way things are here, and do things the way things are done, they tend to be way more successful. The ones that fight against it, usually the ones that fight against it end up giving up and going home. Because those people who say, I'm not doing it that way, I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to show them, we were talking about that recently in a video, weren't we, about the guy that was saying how he's going to, I'm going to teach them, I'm going to teach Japanese people how to handle foreigners, and the people that think, you know, some people, when I say something accepting the way things are, you shouldn't accept that, you should stand up against that, you're a pussy for not fighting against that. The point is, there isn't any foreigner anywhere who's going to come to Japan and change anything. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. So again, you've got those two camps. So that's the as far as the foreigners coming to Japan and how they behave when they're here. Our patron mentioned being tarred with the same brush, and that's something that bothers the group of people who want to come here and not make waves. And be respectful of Japanese people and Japanese culture and be good guests, basically. Those people are often embarrassed by the people who behave badly. And I got to admit, I feel that too. If I'm somewhere and there's foreigners behaving badly, I often feel uncomfortable and embarrassed because I feel like I'm lumped in with the same group, you know, and that's just human nature. You know, that's just human nature. If a Japanese person's experience of a foreigner is negative, then the next foreigner they meet is bound to be sort of influenced. Their thinking about that foreigner is bound to be influenced as well. You know, and there's nothing worse than being somewhere where there's other foreigners behaving badly. You know, we were actually at the beach once, and there were a bunch of foreigners there behaving really badly, and we actually moved because what was happening is the Japanese people would look at them and they'd look at us and they'd look at them, and I got this really uncomfortable feeling that they think we're with those guys. We're not with those guys. So eventually we waited for a sort of a good time. We sort of got up and we moved away to another part of the beach to make it, to get away from them because it was so embarrassing, So there's not much we can do about that. Those of you who want to try and fit in, there's lots you can do. Read the book, How to Do Stuff in Japan book, and look, listen and learn when you come here and be observant. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. If you try, Japanese people, we all make mistakes. I still make mistakes regularly. Most of the videos I've made about how to do stuff in Japan are based on my mistakes, really, because over the years, there's still stuff I find out now that, I did long ago that I hear something I realise now, oh geez, that's why that happened, or I realise mistakes I've made. And as long as you're doing your best, that's all we can do, isn't it? Those of you who don't care, well, you'll be happy too, won't you? Because you don't care, right? So that's from the point of view of the visitor. The other part of our friend's comments were about the hosts, and he said that something about, I don't know if he experienced it firsthand or if it's something he'd seen, that some establishments have a 2-tier system for their billing, that they're charging foreigners more, visitors more for food or for whatever services than they do for locals, and he didn't like that, and it was just that bad vibe was making him hesitate to come back to Japan again, because he visits Japan now and again, And I would say, I know this guy, he's a good man. He's a good man. He's been supporting our channel for years. We've exchanged lots of messages, and I know what he's like. I know the sort of person he is. He's a good man. And I say to you, my friend, without saying your name and embarrassing you, keep coming back, because a few things. Look, there's a few things here. One is there's a whole heap of stuff coming to mind now straight away. Hosts, right? I do understand. There are some hosts. It's quite famous on the internet. The signs outside establishments in Japan saying no foreigners allowed. Right, that's quite famous. I must admit, I've never actually seen one myself, and I've been to all the big cities in Japan and lots of a lot of the small towns as well. I've never seen a sign that says no foreigners, but I've seen enough anecdotal stuff on the internet to know they do exist, right? I made a video years ago talking about discrimination in Japan, and my suggestion was that we vote with our wallet, right? That if there are businesses that don't want foreigners, then I don't know, my natural feeling, some people like to fight against that. We need to fight for our rights, and we need to do this, that and the other, and if people want to do that, that's fabulous. But my thinking is, if a business owner decides they don't want a foreign guest or a foreign customer, then I'll take my money somewhere else. That really doesn't bother me. And also, if we keep in mind the behaviour of so many people who visited Japan starting 400 years ago, it's any wonder some of those business owners feel like that. It's the same as when you try to rent an apartment in Japan. First time I tried to rent an apartment in Japan, I had a really hard time. I went to a few different places, and they kept showing me these grotty, disgusting little places that obviously Japanese people didn't want to live in, and they couldn't rent out. They were trying to find somewhere to rent them. I got shown nothing decent until I went into a real estate office with my Japanese friend, and then we managed to see some decent apartments, right? And again, you look on the internet, a lot of the chat websites years ago, I remember when I first came here, look on those chat websites, and there's all these stories from foreigners saying, yeah, when I moved out of my apartment, I just closed the door and walked away, and went back to my country and didn't worry about it. And there's a lot of foreigners that will talk like that about the state they left their apartment in. I didn't care, I just walked away. And that's the thing, same with the visitors. If they're just coming for a couple of weeks or a year, and it's just that's their experience, and they're going back and they don't really care, and they're not likely to come back again, a lot of them don't care how they behave while they're here. And the result of that is that the real estate companies, a lot of the real estate companies aren't keen on foreigners, right? And it's totally understandable. I don't have trouble understanding that at all. And the same is with restaurants and bars and things like that as well. If they've had a night where they had a bunch of rowdy foreigners in there getting drunk and carrying on and touching up the other customers and carrying on like fools, any wonder they're not keen on having foreigners in their establishment. And I know there's some people complain about this, that's not fair, that wasn't me behaving like that, but this is human nature. You know, if you're a business owner and your experience of foreigners is negative, well, you know, it's not fair that they think that we're all the same. That's not fair. You know, oh, foreigners do this and foreigners do that. That's not fair. But it's just human nature, and you know, it's not surprising, is it? It's not surprising if they've been bitten a few times by having some bad foreigners in there that behave badly. Any wonder they don't want any more in there, right? So, my suggestion is that usually Japanese thinking is that that there's a place for everything, right? There's a time and place for everything, and usually what you'll find is in the genuine tourist places, those guys are happy with tourists because that's what they want. Incidentally, February had a record 2.8 million visitors to Japan in February. 2.8 million, which is a record. So Japanese tourism is booming at the moment. The majority actually from Asia, so Korea and Thailand and Asian countries, India, and then, you know, down the bottom we've got people from Europe and Australia and America and places like that, right? But 2.8 million visitors in February. So there is a huge tourism market in Japan, and those people involved in the tourism industry usually are keen for foreign visitors, right? Not always. There is a huge tourism industry aimed at Japanese people, the local tourism, you know. But a lot of those big popular tourist places are aimed at foreign tourists, and usually we're welcome there. Right, I just came to mind. I remember going into a ryokan in Kyoto about, I don't know, 20 years ago, and I went into this ryokan, and the old guys come out, and it was just a classic little ryokan. It wasn't really in a tourist area, and I've walked in the genkan, and because usually they'll come out and go "Isamasen," and really polite, you know, welcome and really polite, and come in, and really polite, and I've walked in this ryokan and this genkan, and you know, "Sumimasen," and this dude's come out, this old dude's come out and looked at me and gone, mata, gaijin, mata, right? Again, foreigner, again a foreigner, right? He didn't want foreigners. He didn't want foreigners in his ryokan, right? But usually in the tourist places like Kyoto and places like that, Himeji and all those places that get all the tourists, usually they're aimed at tourists, right? Before I forget too, this is another reason why our English-friendly directory, why we feel so strongly about our English-friendly directory, because the businesses on there, the bars and restaurants and hotels and guest houses and all those places on there want foreign guests and customers, right? They want you guys. They want us. They want us. That's why they're on there. You know, that's a bit of a hint. It is a bit of a hint. Not always, by the way. I mean, I've seen hotels and places where they have a page in English, but it's just a token. And when you actually come to communicate with them, they're not keen on foreign guests. You know, I've had lots of those over the years. We research places for the English-friendly directory, and over the years there's been lots of them where I've seen they've got a page in English, and quite often it's half-hearted, Google translated, you know, not really a proper English page. And I'll send them an email or call them up, and they're just not interested. They're just not keen at all. More often than not, if we send an email in English or Japanese, they just don't even answer. They're just not interested. As soon as they see the foreign name, they're just not interested, right? However, the ones on the English-friendly directory are. So if I remember that, I'll also put a link underneath here for that, because if you pick a hotel or restaurant or bar or doctor or lawyer or anybody else on that directory, they'll be keen to hear from you, because that's why they're on there. They're on there because they are English-friendly and because they do want foreign customers and foreign guests, right? So again, there's the voting with your wallet thing again. That you know, the ones that want us, that's where we should spend our money, and the ones that don't want us, all right, that's fine. You know, and you do get that vibe sometimes. I still get it sometimes. I walk in. Usually I'm walking in with my Japanese family. That tends to make a bit of a difference, but I still do walk into places now and again where I get a sort of not a very welcoming vibe compared with what you normally do. And you know, that's fine. I don't know. Some people get really upset about that. You know, discrimination, it's discrimination, which it sort of is, right? But we also, you can get positive and negative discrimination, right? There's some people that treat us well because we're a foreigner, treat us, you know, in a positively different way. positive discrimination, right? That exists. The point is, discrimination exists. I mean, there are activists, there are people who want to campaign against these things, and I'm going to tell them. And I mean, our patron talking about that, the businesses that have two different pricing schedules, one for the foreigners and one for the locals, that is pretty rude, right? And in a lot of countries that'd probably be illegal. I don't know if it's illegal in Japan or not, I don't know. But I don't care, because there's always someone that pops up on a video like this in the comments and says, oh, I wouldn't stand for that, I'd fight against that. And I've been abused before for not fighting against it. Oh, you just accept it, you're a pussy. You just accept it, what a pussy. Why don't you stand up for yourself, right? And, that's fine. If people want to come to Japan and try and change Japan, they can do that. They can do that if they want to. It's just been my observation, it doesn't work. It's been my observation that it's much smarter just to adapt and go, right, okay, well, this business doesn't seem keen to have my money, so I'll take my money somewhere else. That's the way to do it. To our buddy again, I just keep thinking of you, mate. Don't let it put you off coming. Just because some people have been here before us and behaved badly, and just because some hosts here aren't keen on us. Some Japanese people in general, I get bad looks. I'll be in a convenience store or something, buying something, and you just catch someone's eye and they'll give you a sort of a, disapproving look. And that's going to happen. And maybe it's justified because they've had a bad experience with a foreigner, or maybe they're just a racist or a bigot, right? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're going to get that. You're going to get that in any country, aren't you? Racists and bigots and people who've had a bad experience with someone that looks like you, right? That could happen in any country I could go to. There could be someone who's had a bad experience with a big old fat man, right? And now they don't like big old fat man anymore. There's always going to be discrimination and bigotry, right? So if you want to fight it, that's fine. My advice is just walk away from it, take your money somewhere else, because there are enough. Whatever my friend there at Patreon, wherever you want to go, man, there's going to be places there that are really keen to have you. There'll be somewhere for you to eat, somewhere for you to stay. There'll be, everything that you want to do. There'll be people that'll be keen to have you here, right? So, yeah, don't let it put you off. So that's both sides of the coin there. There's the perspective of the visitor and the perspective of the hosts. Bad guests and bad hosts both exist, don't they? So we just have to be careful to try not to be a bad guest. And if we come across a bad host, I mean, it does feel unjustified. Our old mate there at the ryokan, with the mata gaijin, again a foreigner. Again, I did stay there, by the way, because I'd already just had to. It was like late, and that was the plan, and I was going to stay there, and I'd been recommended to me by someone else, and so I just stayed there. But yeah, he wasn't keen. He was pretty happy to see me go the next day. But I behaved well. That's the other thing we can do. One of my buddies told me years ago, he always thinks of himself as a diplomat, and that's one thing we can do. If we behave well, then we can leave the impression that, hey, not all foreigners are bad, some of them are quite nice. And that's the other thing I often think about this. I left my room at the ryokan nice and tidy and neat, and I was all very polite, and I paid my bill, and off I went, and so, that guy knows that we're not all bad. And I think that's what we can do. We can have a positive effect wherever we go, So anyway, that's more than enough of that. To our buddy, our patron, buddy, come again. Come again. It's good here. It's good here. Come again. Don't let it bother you. Anyway, that's enough of that. More videos coming soon.